Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode number 1 of the Wildcard Draw. My name is Matty Egan, and it's my absolute pleasure to be your host. For those of you that don't know me, I previously have done podcasts before. Believe it or not, it was 10 years ago that I teamed up with the former AFL great, Corey McKernan, and we did a bit of a niche podcast on the NFL. So obviously, Corey and I both share some of the same passions. We ran a successful little podcast on iTunes and then came close to making it into a TV show. Took it to Maguire Media with Nick Maxwell, the former Premiership captain from the Collingwood Football Club. However, due to the actual niche of being the NFL and with so many other sports things happening on in Melbourne at that time of the year, it didn't make it. However, as I look around now, I can see everyone's doing a podcast. So what I've done is I've called this the Wildcard Draw because that's also a term well known in the NFL for teams that are struggling to make it to the playoffs. But if they do perform well within that month of the playoffs and scrape in, they can go all the way. And we saw that happen a few years ago. I think 2016 was the Bulldogs, where they scraped in on that 8th position, played well for the month of September, and the next thing you know, they'd snatched a grand final. And it does happen quite often in the NFL as well. And the Patriots have been one of those teams that have been known to actually do that. So if Seinfeld was a show about nothing, this is going to be a show about everything. And I'm going to touch on different subjects, whether they're sports. I am going to talk about culture. We want to talk about movies. We want to talk about things that are happening within our community, whether they be based, which is where I am here in Melbourne, Australia, or they could be worldwide as well. We're going to have an array of different types of guests coming on, and hopefully I can do my absolute best to entertain you. And of course, I want to say welcome and thanks for listening. Alrighty. So for episode number 1, we have got a great show lined up where we're going to talk about the celebration of the North Melbourne Football Club as they celebrate 100 years this Thursday night at Marvel Stadium as they take on the Western Bulldogs. There's going to be quite a big attendance in terms of the actual club. So we've got the Premiership players from the 70s attending, Premiership players from the 90s attending, as well as anyone else that's sort of been affiliated with the club over its time in the AFL. It's going to be a tough ask for this Thursday night to beat the Bulldogs. North Melbourne are still a very developing side with young talent and just starting to find their feet under coach Alistair Clarkson as they have sort of come up with this game plan that's evolving into the current day, because obviously Alistair Clarkson's had to come up with a new style, a new plan, as opposed to his success at the Hawthorn Football Club. And I have heard rumours that Dennis Pagan will be on the field with Alistair Clarkson to address the team before the first quarter on Thursday night. And which will lead us into our special guest for this week. We have got Hamish McIntosh, former player of the North Melbourne Football Club, and we've chosen that position of ruck because this club has had some success in this position of ruck. And I'm talking about none other than Corey McKernan, who was an absolute star for the 2 premierships that he was involved in the 90s. He also played up full forward. He arguably won a Brownlow medal, also arguably won a Norwich Rising Star Award. And then we carried on, to great players like, we even had Matthew Burton, who was a fantastic ruckman, Hamish McIntosh, and Todd Goldstein, who's still playing today, even for Essendon. And then, of course, we've got the young talent that is now doing an absolutely fantastic job as well, Tristan Cherry, who's probably going to be an All-Australian ruckman this year. So, in addition to that, we are also going to talk about Brad Pitt's new movie F1, and we're going to also touch a little bit on one of his very successful movies that he did, which was about sports too, which was Moneyball. So I just wanted to give you a bit of an outline as to today's show, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my personal connection to the North Melbourne Football Club and why I think the club's so special, and then we'll get into Hamish McIntosh. So, the North Melbourne Football Club. How did I end up there? It's a great question, and I do have a bit of a story, and hopefully I can entertain you by telling it. My father was originally a Fitzroy supporter because they had a butcher shop on Smith Street, Collingwood. One side of Smith Street, Collingwood was Fitzroy, the other side was Collingwood. And my dad grew up going to the Fitzroy games and stuff like that, and because his father was a Fitzroy supporter. However, my father had a business in North Melbourne with a gentleman by the name of Les Ross. Les Ross was a big North Melbourne supporter who was also originally Collingwood, so it's a funny little story how they were both poached and ended up at North Melbourne, because North Melbourne in the 70s was this hip, fun club to be around that was drawing a lot of attention, and hence how it got Ron Barassi and these big names like Sam Kekovich, Malcolm Blight, Wayne Schimmelbusch, the list goes on, and they did hit football immortality, which is what Keka talks about in the show The North Story. So my dad was a Gold Pass member, and I can't take anything away. I need to mention Barry Cheatley, who's also recently just passed away, and he was a huge character within that football club, former player, but then turned into this sort of culture representative of the club, and had a lot to do with organising what was then the evolution of the coterie. And in the 70s, it was Collingwood and North Melbourne. They were the two teams that did this coterie very well. And let's not beat around the bush here. North Melbourne's always been a team that's got everyone loving it when they're doing well, but everyone that disappears and jumps to another club or another code or something like that when they're not doing so well. And then that leaves this core of passionate North Melbourne supporters that are there through thick and thin. And every club is different, and every club's got their own community, and every club's got their own culture. And North Melbourne's is very much a family culture. It's a club that gives to you and then expects you to give back. And it has done that for me as well. So there was success in the 70s. My dad always told me these stories, and the stories were just fantastic about, the elephant that went berserk, and that my father used to have a Rolls Royce and he'd drive into the club and everyone knew it was him. And back then, everyone drank and drive. Trust me, it was this culture of everyone knows you by your first name. And, they had the bar, the Northerners bar, which was down underneath the stand. And, people would just go down there. The Kanga Casino. There was a restaurant up the top where you could actually look out in the ground. The club rooms were horrible, absolutely horrible, and facilities were absolutely nothing. It was bricks and cement, literally. But there was this atmosphere about the place. There was a smell about this place that they're just still embedded in me, and they were really good memories of going on a Thursday night down to training and watching, Wayne Carey and Corey McKernan and Wayne Schwass and Mark Roberts, Darren Crocker. These guys, they were right there with you, and I could go into the rooms after a Thursday night training. You could get a pie, and if there was extra food left over, you were always allowed to have some. And any of our club functions, kids were allowed. So a lot of other clubs don't allow children into their coterie or their sort of presidential functions, whereas we embrace every family member to come along, and we embrace other people from other clubs to come to our functions and help us get those numbers up and create revenue. We invented Friday night football. We invented the AFL Grand Final breakfast, which is the North Melbourne Grand Final breakfast. We have been innovators in making sure that our club survives and doesn't end up being merged up into Queensland or something like that by, playing 3 games down in Canberra or up in Canberra and 3 games down in Tasmania. And even now we're playing 3 games in Western Australia or whatever it is. I'm not sure if it's 3 or 2. So we've done our absolute best to come up with other ways to generate revenue to make sure that we can survive with these other clubs like Collingwood, Carlton, Hawthorn. I mean, gee, haven't Hawthorn just blown up since what Alistair Clarkson did down there? Even the Demons, their numbers went right up when they had a little bit of a taste of success. So, yeah, I went through the 90s as a 14-year-old kid and then, watched them all the way and win premierships up until I was 19, 20. And then from there, it was my turn to sort of have my part in the club. And I was a coterie member, which was called the Northerners. I ended up being the secretary of the Northerners because they had their own board and we were a separate entity that generated revenue for the club and then handed over a check to the club each year. And then from there, I ended up working with Corey McKernan in his events working on grand final luncheons, the US Masters, the Super Bowl. I was in charge of the corporate suites at the MCG. As I said, it's a club that gave to me and I've given back. So I wouldn't have or be able to do these podcasts now if I didn't have my experience with the North Melbourne Football Club and the journey that I've been on. So it's a very special club to me. And my kids are going to have their own little journey as well. And, you've got to be there when we're not doing well. You can always have your say, of course. And you've also got to be there when they are doing well, and those are the good years. So hopefully we get to see some more of them under the current coach of Alistair Clarkson in the next 5 years. So that's what this club means to me. I've been told that I've got a bit of an obsession, but I always look at it as it's a part of my community. And even though we don't live in North Melbourne, because it's more of an area that's got apartments, but no one really does. I mean, people that as Collingwood supporters live in Ringwood and Richmond supporters live in Wantirna and North Melbourne supporters live everywhere. So, which will lead us into our special guest, and he's going to talk to us and answer some questions and tell you what it's like as a player being affiliated with this fantastic club. But I just wanted to share my personal journey with everyone, and hopefully it was entertaining and you can maybe relate to it in some way, shape or form. I can say this, that my wife, who I've been married to for 5 years, doesn't know the club's song because we've hardly sung it in the last 5 years. So she very much has seen so many losses that when we do get a win, it's great to see the animation in her when she gets to celebrate that joy of 4 premiership points at whatever point it is during the year. So we'll now lead into our special guest. So I look forward to having a chat with Hamish McIntosh. Okay, so he was the number 9 draft pick in the 2002 National Draft. He was born in 1984. He came from New South Wales. His breakout game was actually in Los Angeles in at UCLA against the Sydney Swans. He got best on ground in an exhibition match. And he's another one of these fantastic ruckmen that have come through the system and played for North Melbourne. And I'm speaking none other than Hamish McIntosh, and he was also an absolute fantastic clubman for this club as well. Extremely popular. He played 107 games for North Melbourne, kicked 59 goals, and then he finished his career from 2013 to 2015 at Geelong, where he played 19 games and kicked 7 goals. So firstly, I want to say a massive thank you, Hamish, for being on the show. And I think that there's no one better than yourself to give our listeners or viewers out there a bit of an insight as to what you think of this club as we celebrate 100 years. So I'm going to lead straight into my first question, H, and I want to ask, looking back at your time at North Melbourne, what does being of the club mean to you personally?
The club for me personally, it's everything. It's given me a life from an 18-year-old down at Albury to moving to Melbourne where my life is now. And the club provided unbelievable support on field and unbelievable support off field. And some of the friends I've got now are friends for life. And to that club I'm forever indebted for and always want to see them go well. and the memories it's given me is something I could never replace. And look forward to supporting this club for the rest of my life.
Okay, and that's a really, really great way that you've just described that, H. Now, North have had such a proud tradition with ruckman over the years. What was it like for you stepping into that role and representing the club in such an important position?
Stepping in the ruck was an interesting time. I was obviously pretty raw when I got to North Melbourne, so the thought and process around even stepping there, AFL football was a long way away from when I first got drafted, given the amount of work I had to do, and it took me a while to get there, and there's a few guys I had to work hard to finally take their spot into the side, and I managed to enjoy a decent run in the ruck while I was there, and we had some decent success in a couple of the years, and then obviously once my injuries started to take place and a young guy coming through, Todd Goldstein, I could see he's going to be a superstar. Obviously, starting to take my role and still playing to this day is unbelievable. But yeah, the responsibility I had at the time when I was playing as the main ruckman there for a while, I loved it. Enjoyed every bit of it, and the combat each time you go out to play against your opponent. It's a feeling you can never get back and something you miss, but something I really, really enjoyed.
And you've been a part of some big moments on and off the field. Is there a particular match, memory, or story that really sums up what North Melbourne is all about for you?
Probably the main one that sticks out here in terms of memories would be the 2006 pre-season and the 2007 season just in general. 2006, we started pre-season incredibly early. I think it was mid-October, our first fitness test after a pretty horrible year and in the previous year, and then obviously coming back we all got incredibly fit, and the 07 season was just a remarkable one for us as a club. We jumped from like 13th or 14th on the ladder, I think it was, to finishing top 4 and then making the prelim. A lot of people didn't obviously pick us to do anything that year, and I've gone on record a few times saying that it was definitely the most enjoyable year of my career on field and off field with how tight the group was, and definitely the final series was the pinnacle. Probably the best time of my whole career was that final series, and we still remember losing to Geelong in the qualifying final by, I won't quote a point somewhere, but it was a lot. And then back to the wall, we beat Hawthorn in the semi-final, and then obviously we lost to Port Adelaide by a lot in the prelim final. But still, to come back and experience those wins with your best friends was a great experience. To get so far and so deep as we did, I think that would be the general moment that I feel was the best I had through my career for that 12-month period.
From your perspective, what makes North Melbourne different from other clubs? What is it that sets the Kangaroos apart?
What really makes North Melbourne different? Everyone talks about culture. I think every club talks about culture in the AFL around, that makes some difference from the others. And I generally do believe North Melbourne, when I was playing, had a point of difference. The people off field, the support they had to put in, wasn't a very financially viable club, so a lot of people did a lot of work for definitely well below the money they were worth. A lot of volunteers were putting huge blood, sweat and tears into the footy club that we wouldn't have survived without them. So you can imagine the culture and the respect that builds within the football club, and that's just something I was always appreciative of what they did, and obviously the point of difference I felt that North Melbourne had for on-field culture and off-field culture, and the older guys that I was coming through were unbelievable support. I loved everything about the on-field experiences, but even the off-field, which I'm sure everyone's aware of, the footy trips and the experiences we had all around the world. It's just something you could never, ever experience unless you got there to live and feel it yourself. And it's something I'll always look back and cherish on until the day I die.
And what's your hope for the next generation of players coming through North Melbourne? What advice would you share with young ruckmen starting out today?
What advice would I share? Do a lot of things differently to me at high school compared to obviously the work rate and workload that will be needed to get drafted. The world's different now with football, and you need to be so much more fitter, so much more prepared as soon as you get drafted. So definitely that would be my advice for any ruckman or any player coming through, would be just put the work in, because once you're into the system, you've only got so long to perform before you might be out the other end. So fitness, work, respect, all those sorts of points. It's more important than ever in today's game. That's what I would advise any young player coming through now, especially any young ruckman. They're even rawer. They need more time in the system. So the work they do pre-draft and the work they do once they get drafted is going to be so important to get themselves AFL ready as soon as possible. Hopefully, a lot sooner than what I was when I played.
Hamish, thank you so much. These are fantastic answers, and I really appreciate you sharing your personal journey with us. Hopefully, our viewers have been really entertained. I know I certainly was, and I look forward to seeing you on Thursday night. And most certainly, I'll be the one buying you the beers because I'm pretty sure they're included in my package. So, thanks again, Hamish, and I really appreciate it. Okay, now I want to talk about a subject that I'm wondering, where does this go? Because let's talk about how big movies were in the 80s and the 90s and how good they were. And I wonder if I'm at that age where I'm now so old that I was the annoying person that I used to listen to when I was 13, 14 years old, when the older people would say to me, the movies are crap these days, people are just dying and it's all violence. And there was a huge thing in our school which was about how much violence is on TVs and what type of role models are there for us. And now I look back and I wish that they were more like them. So the video shop was a huge part of my weekend because it had video games. We would play NBA Jam, we would play the Simpsons game, we would play the Ninja Turtles game, we would play Street Fighter. You would pick up your 5 weeklies for $12. You would pay $6 for an overnight movie, but there was always something good coming out. And if you weren't at the video shop, you were at the cinemas. And the cinema was where we used to go to the shopping centre, like Chadstone, with our friends, and we would all wear whatever the clothing was that was fashionable at that time. And the movies were always something that you could go to when there was nothing to do. If there was no concerts, or if you weren't going away, or if it was, you had your long school holiday break, movies was like something that you did, as well as 10-pin bowling, roller skating, ice skating, stuff like that. So where to for cinema? Because the drive-ins are now a niche, and you might find one in every major state of Australia, if that. They used to be a big thing, but obviously, with THX Sound and Lucas Arts and stuff like that, people want a full experience of listening to a really good, or watching a really good movie with having that surround sound. But I think since 2019 and COVID, the cinemas are dropping, and with the evolution of Netflix and Stan and Prime, these bigger corporations are now moving towards that. Like Adam Sandler has almost completely switched to Netflix, and that's happening for a lot of other big actors too. So some movies aren't even making it to the cinema. The last movie I went and saw at the cinema was the Indiana Jones film, which was okay, in my opinion. The CGI is quite good when Harrison Ford goes back to when he's younger, but at the same time, I didn't get that same type of feeling of what I used to get when I went and saw, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Or not that I saw that at the movies, but like, say, The Last Crusade, which I did see at the movies, or Return of the Jedi, which I did see at the movies. And there's been a lot of great movies that Terminator 2, stuff like that have really given you great memories of going to the movies. So I guess that's sort of a question that I did pose for our audience today, which does lead me into the next thing I want to talk about, and that is Brad Pitt's new movie F1. Okay, Formula One. It is probably the most expensive sports in the world. And the fans that love Formula One, they are in an entity of their own. Formula One, it's very much a team sport, but you wouldn't think it is because there's just one person sitting in a car and going around a track as fast as they possibly can. I love going to the Melbourne Grand Prix. I love the corporate functions. I love the branding and the teams and the sponsors. And I love the grid girls. So apart from that, do I watch the sport and stay up all night religiously every 2 weeks like a lot of people I know? No. But do I like Brad Pitt? Yes. And do I like sports films? Yes. And would I go to the movies to see this one? Yes. So I'm a little bit excited about this film. So let's go through the actors and then we're going to watch the preview. So obviously there's Brad Pitt. The other big one for me is Javier Bardem. And, you know, he's just played this amazing characters, which, you know, No Country for Old Men, or I think it was a Bond movie where he was just such a bad guy. And he really is this kind of awkward actor that plays these characters just so well. Other names that we need to mention is Damson Idris, Kerry Condon, and Tobias Menzies. And the director is the same director that did Top Gun, Maverick. So very exciting. Let's have a look at the preview and see if you can get excited yourself.
My rook is a phenomenal talent, but he's young. You plus him, boom. I got a team.
When was the last time you won a race?
Sunday, Daytona.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant Formula One.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then same as you.
There's this new guy. He's old. He's such a prick. He's quick, though.
So yeah, that looks pretty exciting, and I cannot wait for this weekend, and my wife and I are going to go and see this movie. So I wanted to move it into another sports story that was also starred Brad Pitt, which was based on a true story, and that's the movie Moneyball. If you have not seen this movie, and I have come across sports fanatic people that are still yet to have seen this movie, I'm telling you right now, it is absolutely, I believe it was nominated for Academy Awards for Best Film, and it is just inspiring. Now, I'm not a baseball fan at all, other than I like the Caps. So this movie, it touches on owner of a team, general manager of a team, Billy Beane, who was the number one prospect, but just didn't make it in as a player, but obviously stayed in the game for many years and ended up being the general manager, and how he found a economics student from Yale. So Billy Beane's Brad Pitt, the student is Jonah Hill, and the coach of the team is Art Howe, who's played by none other than Philip Seymour Hoffman, and I can't tell you what an actor he is, and some of his films, and he's now, you know, obviously has left us, and I can't have so much respect for Philip Seymour Hoffman as an actor. But this movie, it's I'm going to show the preview for that, and then we're going to sign off for the end of this episode. I highly recommend watching this movie, and it's extremely inspiring. It's probably in my top 5 best sports films ever made. Hopefully Formula One can be in that one too. But when we talk about the Rocky films, and we talk about the Kurt Russell in Miracle, these are some really good movies, but Moneyball's up there for me as well. So I want to say thank you to all my listeners for being a part of this episode 1. Please subscribe, and we're gonna get an email made up for people to write in, so that you can give us some feedback or tell us about some subjects you'd love me to touch on. We'll put something together for episode 2. It's going to be a little bit different, and as I said, if Seinfeld was the show about nothing, this podcast is going to be the show about everything. So thank you so much, and we'll see you in episode number 2. And I'm going to leave you right now with the preview to Moneyball. I sincerely hope that you enjoy that film as much as I did as well. Thank you so much, and take care.
I need more money.
We're not New York. We're not going to compete with a $120 million payroll.
We got to think differently.
Your goal shouldn't be to buy players. Your goal should be to buy wins.
Who are you?
Here is 25 players that have been overlooked by every other team for one reason or another, like an island of misfit toys. In here is a championship team, one that we can afford.
Who's the kid? The kid is the new assistant GM.